I actually had one day where I went to ring up a guy from the footy club, and his mum answered the phone. And I suddenly realised I only knew him as the missile merchant from Marrakesh, and thought, geez, I better hang up here because I don't know his actual name. I'll go and look it up.
This is Legends with Bevo, thanks to Anytime Fitness Glenelg and Glenelg Electrical Services.
This episode of Legends with Bevo is proudly sponsored by Kookaburra Homes. Kookaburra Homes have been awarded South Australia's most professional home builder 2 years in a row. They're a true SA success story and are passionate about other South Australians sharing their success stories. Yes, welcome to another edition of Legends with Bevo. Now, there's a book at the moment that's going gangbusters around South Australia. It's called The Definitive Rulebook, and I'm joined by the author of the book today, Malcolm Ashwood. Here is the book, The Definitive Rulebook. It's an absolute ripper. But Malcolm, you'll tell us all about it. Malcolm, great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Bevan, and thanks for the opportunity to have a chat. Yeah, it's a book. What happened is I helped run Adelaide Uni Footy Club's past players, and we had an event in Melbourne. We ran functions in Melbourne and Sydney, and John Harms was the guest speaker. John Harms is the main operator of the Footy Almanac site, and he asked me to write a game report on that day. It was Crows and Western Bulldogs, so I did that for a while with doing game reports. Still writing SANFL reports as well, but then I discovered really my real passion was interviewing individuals, finding about their life, and there's a story in every single person. I think that's a really important point. A lot of things when I started this, what really struck me was how many people have been through tragedy. Ross Dillon's father died when he was 16, went to fix a drill on Christmas Day and electrocuted himself. Bruce Winter never met his mother, his actual mother. She died in Papua New Guinea, went to just cut herself and died of septicemia. So there's that. David Wilde lost his wife to cancer. There's lots of areas in there. Chris Grigg with motor neuron.
Yeah, that's so sad. We were speaking about that off air. I've actually interviewed Mitch before, and one of the most loveliest guys that you could meet. Pretty tough on the field when we run into him, but his dad, Chris, as you mentioned, he's a really good fella, and been involved with the Sturt Football Club for a number of years. And you're right, it's just such a tragedy what's happening there. And you actually saw Chris recently. How's he going?
Yeah. Look, I've known Chris since 1981, so we go back a long way. He's a person I have just immense respect for. He's a quality individual. Him and his lovely wife Sam are fantastic. And look, it's heartbreaking. The deterioration's gradual. Chris is still moving. His speech is deteriorating, and Sam helped with a bit of interpreting. But the longer I stayed for probably an hour and a half chatting, the more I actually picked up. He's fighting. He's fighting hard. Neil Danaher, how he's lasted so long is quite staggering.
It's amazing. Yeah.
We're doing the article on Chris and that, doing the research. 2 people die in Australia every day, and 2 people are diagnosed with motor neuron disease every day in Australia. And I think that was really quite hidden in society until a high-profile person in Neil Danaher got it and has really created an awareness. And Neil is just remarkable. He not only what he goes through himself and the fundraising and all that, which is staggering there, but his support of everybody else is just amazing. We lost Damien Lane to the insidious disease. He's about 15 months ago now, a bit longer. And his support to Damien and that was quite incredible as well. He's a remarkable man.
And the title of the book, The Definitive Rulebook, a very interesting title. Yeah. Where's that come from?
I've got to thank Shane Devereaux, rookie, for the title there, a Pembroke mate. He thought of that. My nickname's The Rulebook. I gave an umpire a blast years ago, 1984, I think. And I quoted the rule word for word because I was an umpire as well. And I think I was probably a better umpire than him, and he was probably a better footballer than me. So, the nickname stuck well and truly from that day forward. And, there's probably a lot of people who don't know my actual name, which is fine. Yeah, that's Adelaide, that's sport, that's Adelaide Uni Footy Club. I actually had one day where I went to ring up a guy from the footy club, and his mum answered the phone, and I suddenly realised I only knew him as the missile merchant from Marrakesh, and thought, geez, I better hang up here because I don't know his actual name and go and look it up because it could be religiously offensive. And Dadsy and Bridgie and Howie out there, they would certainly understand that with helping with the uni footy club over the years. So.
Well, having been involved in different footy clubs over the years myself, mate, nicknames are the best part about it, I think.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's really funny, actually. It's, in terms of the sports people in the book, there's certainly a lot of them, mainly, South Australian past players. I guess this is a hard one to answer, but who are some of your favourites that you interviewed and why?
Probably favourites, probably not quite the right word, more with the impact. Look, when Bali happened, I think we all thought at the time, geez, this is terrible, it's diabolical, but it didn't really hit for me personally until Sturt guys got back to the airport. Watching Tim Weatherald run to his mum, Julie, and having known Julie for 40 odd years now, that really hit me big time. And I hesitated for a long time, which is unlike me. And then eventually it was one day at Prince's where Tim and I were doing an Auskick clinic for the kids there. I can probably virtually go and stand at the blade of grass where I asked him, and he replied about Bali, and he replied very firmly, yes, please do ask me. Please talk about it with me. I've been encouraged to talk about it. He'd actually written a book as well, his story about Bali. So Weathers and I have discussed that pretty infinite and very detailed, and just, it's
tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, or it's incomprehensible, Yeah. And I don't think people realise that probably everyone in that building was probably 30 seconds to a minute away from leaving us.
Yeah, it's certainly, I guess there's been a lot of tragedy with that, but also some amazing stories have come out of it, of survival, and thankfully Tim's one of those. So it's very interesting that you mentioned Tim, because there's been so many. I won't give it away because people, want people to go out and buy the book, The Definitive Rulebook. I mentioned before it's available at Dylan's bookstores at Norda. Any other places that you can buy it as well, Matt?
Yep, certainly Colonnades News Agency down at Noarlunga, also through Southern Cross News Agency in town. Or look, anyone can feel free to message me, Malcolm Ashwood on Facebook, whatever. Anyone can message me as well. I'm out and about.
It's certainly very popular. Every time you put up a post about it, mate, it goes gangbusters on Facebook. So you're a popular man, Malcolm, and it's a wonderful idea. And we all love our South Australian sports stars. So it's a great idea.
Yeah. It was an idea which sort of snowballed over time. Some other people, look, Fred Block, Fred Block was the head of Adelaide Uni Footy Club. He is my hero and probably the greatest mentor I've had, him and the late Marty Bradshaw. And Chocker's struggling with dementia as well at the moment. Poignant subject this week because I've lost my mum this week with dementia, and we were talking about it off air.
Yeah, condolences about that, mate.
Yeah, so
it's a horrible thing. My dad's going through it at the moment as well. It's not nice.
So immense respect to my mum Margaret.
Yes, absolutely.
And my dad and all that support there. But look, Grenville Dietrich character, probably my favourite story. It is well known, but Grenville Dietrich walked out of a pub. No taxis there. So he walked down the road to a pizza bar. Do you do home deliveries? Yes, sir. So he went and stood at the corner kept asking the fourth person, you off to 32 Glover? Whatever. Fourth person, yep, I'm with you from a lift home. So Grenville said he got the lift home for cheaper than taxi and a pizza as well. He's an eccentric genius as well.
Yeah, one thing I sort of love about Legends with Bevo is just being able to speak to amazing people, not only, big name people, but just people that have amazing stories. And you mentioned at the start, I couldn't agree with you more. It's really interesting that everyone has a story and we love hearing people's stories, Malcolm. And so what sort of gives you the passion, and what do you enjoy most about interviewing these great sports stars?
I think just finding out things that we didn't know. And look, Rick Neagle was a classic. Neags, again, go back a long way with him. And he said, I don't feel worthy. And I said, Neags, while I loved your 6 goals in the 82 grand final as a Nord supporter, in reality, that's irrelevant compared to what you're doing for the disability sector now. His son, Mitchell, is heavily autistic on the extreme side. And look, Neags is incredible what he's doing there off the side. And Neags got me involved and helped him a bit with the election, last state election a while back. And went to the function that night. And I'd coached cricket, was coaching Pembroke at that stage, and we'd lost outright. I was in a bit of a dark mood. And with 5 minutes in there, stop being an idiot. What are you nicked off about? A Mickey Mouse game of sport. was feeding a lady who's, needed full help and wheeling people around. And I thought, that's more real. Stop carrying on about a game of sport. And yeah, Neeks, I deliberately called that chapter about Rick Nagel. He's my life leveler. And yeah, a lot of respect for Rick Nagel.
Wonderful. And your love for Nord, you're wearing the Nord gear there. Where's all that come about? And it's interesting because I'm a big Port supporter and we've got a pretty big rivalry with the old Nord.
Yes.
Magpies go back a long time. Talk about your involvement with Nord. You're still involved with the club, I believe, now. Is that correct?
Yeah, still involved a bit. Probably not quite as much as I was, but I'm on the past players committee. While I didn't play for Nord, help out, bit of an organiser, let's be honest. As we know, most people are followers, not too many are organisers. So give a hand with membership and that side of things as well. Look, one other story where Alan Stringer is in the book, and that was quite deliberate in terms of Alan is the only person I did not know before I wrote the book. Every single other person in the book I had some sort of relationship with. And Alan was deliberate in that way because the article is mainly about depression, and I didn't want any perceived bias, and I didn't want any fun stories in there. I wanted it to be about Alan and about depression and that. So, hopefully there's that side of it is an important thing for mental health. And that, look, David Payne, Payne struggled with alcoholism. I wrote about that, and I thought there's one thing about me, I'll always be honest. I hate crap in terms of that way. It would have been hypocritical if I didn't write about myself. I've had my own struggles in that way. I'm now 8 years since I've had a drink, so
congratulations.
Apologies to the pubs and clubs who've gone bankrupt without my support. But so Paney and I have got a link there, and Paney came and spoke at the book launch, and I think there is a connection between David and I where probably we go a bit forward. We can probably confide in each other a bit, and that way. So yeah, you could have heard a pin drop where Paney was speaking last Thursday night.
Yeah, it's certainly another one I'd love to get on Legends with Bevo for a chat, that's for sure. And you mentioned Strings. Couldn't beat a nicer bloke, Malcolm, for an ex-Bays mongrel that he was back in the day.
Oh, look, and it was a classic sporting person. Yeah, hadn't met him. We met up, and within 5 minutes we're talking away like you would have thought we'd known each other for 20 years, which is
that's wonderful.
Classic of sport. But
yeah. And what a way to kick off the SANFL season. We mentioned before the Port Nord rivalry. It's very interesting because last year we didn't have Port and the Crows in the SANFL, and a lot of people are not too happy about them being back in the SANFL again.
I'm one of those.
Oh, you're one of those. Yeah. Okay, interesting, because it's, sort of hear people say they love it, other people hate it, and you talk to the players, and I've spoken to a couple of Bays boys in recent times, and the actual backmen, and they love playing against like your Port Adelaide and Crows listed AFL players because they're playing against the best, and it makes them play better and gives them the real opportunity. But
while there's that side of it, and I don't blame either AFL club for it, in reality you've got 8 teams trying to win the premiership, 2 teams where they're quite correctly their main priority is development. Now let's use Port Adelaide as an example. So you could have young Hayes rucking in SA at a game and Lysett playing in that SANFL game as well. Now for Port to win that game, Lysett goes on the ball. But no, they want Hayes to learn and that. And there's nothing wrong with the AFL sides doing that, but I just think there must be a national reserves comp. I've felt that way for years. It was going to happen a few years ago. Teams were actually told to prepare for it. AFL teams were all prepared. They were getting ready to sign up extra players. And to this day, I don't know why it didn't happen.
For what it's worth, I actually agree with you. As much as I love my Port Magpies, and I still feel as though a national reserves competition will be best. And we saw last year that the SANFL competition was wonderful. It was still, getting really good crowds. And we saw, I guess, a one-sided grand final in the end with the Eagles being too strong. But we didn't really miss Port and the Crows last year, I don't think. So I feel as though a national reserves competition would be a great idea. And it sort of takes you back to the old days when, say in the VFL, we had sort of Richmond reserves would play before the Richmond Collingwoods or whatever. Like how good would it be to just have a showdown where Port and the Crows main team are playing, and then before that you get there early and you watch Port and the Crows play.
That's how I feel it should be.
I actually think that would be a really good idea, and let's hope one day it happens, Malcolm. But
I think the other thing though, it needs to be a bit clearness on at the moment. The true South Australian, the older people amongst us as SANFL followers, 90% agree that that's the way to go. What I would love to know, and it's kept hidden, how much money does the SANFL actually get out of AFL from catering and that side of it? In other words, will the SANFL club survive without the AFL operations? Now, let's also remember where people are saying, oh, that money should only go to the AFL clubs. Let's remember those AFL clubs didn't start unless they've been in SANFL competition.
Yes.
So I think people who go along that track, oh, well, nothing should go back to the SANFL, lose the real reality. But I just think there needs to be a bit more openness about financial things because there's so many rumours.
You're right. It needs to be. Yeah, I'd put it on the table and, tell the truth. I totally agree. And before I let you go, another topic that's been very hotly discussed in recent times has been this year's Tokyo Olympics. And 80% of Japanese locals actually don't want the Olympics to go ahead, which is quite staggering. And we're hearing all sorts of things where there's going to be no crowds, there's no chanting, clapping. It's sort of becoming a bit of a farce. I don't understand why they can't just have it with 10% capacity, at least some sort of atmosphere. What's your take on it?
Again, that's our thoughts as sports people. Now, let's remember, they're getting this advice from top medical bit. Like, I find it amusing where people come in and they bag the premiers, Dan Andrews and that and all that. Let's remember, though, they're actually getting the advice from top medicals. They're not making that decision. So, at the moment, I think this pandemic is way more important than sport. I think South Australia have made the right decision not to go to South Africa. Yes, we all love our sport, but let's remember, at the moment, there's thousands of people dying every day around the world without this. I think that's a tad more important than sport, let alone. And we're sports
so you're
nuts.
suggesting postpone it again?
I think so.
Okay, interesting.
I think until we get on top with the vaccine, I think the vaccinations have got to happen, and the sooner the better, obviously.
It's going to be a very interesting next few months to see what happens, isn't it? So, yeah. Well, Malcolm Ashwood, thanks so much for joining us today on Legends with Bevo, mate. Well done on the book, The Definitive Rulebook. As I mentioned before, it's a great book. Go out and buy yourself a copy. I can't wait to have a read, so thanks for providing that to me today, mate. And look forward to seeing what's going to be happening in the future with yourself in terms of being an author and the rest of your life, mate. Keep up the great work.
Greatly appreciated, and thanks for your support.
Sounds so good.